Hello, my name is Catherine Sendak, and welcome to CEPA's State of the Alliance, a series bringing together thought leaders across Europe and North America to deliberate the most pressing challenges facing allies and partners. Today, I am honored to welcome the Slovakian Minister of Defense, Martin Sklenár. Minister, welcome.
Thank you very much.
It has been a busy and important summer for European security. We have a lot to look forward to going through the rest of the year and into 2024. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So we are more than 18 months into Russia's full-scale invasion into Ukraine. From your point of view, what is your assessment of how the alliance has supported Ukraine up to this point?
Well, the effort is tremendous, right? What we have seen since the beginning, that's my first point that I want to stress, is the unity in the alliance. I mean, I've been doing this business 20 years. Whenever you go to NATO and EU meetings, sometimes you get this feeling that we get stuck in some of the issues and we are trying to push our points and have a discussion, argumenting, and it creates the impression that the alliance has a lot of things that it needs to discuss. But once there is a situation for which the alliance was made, the unity and clear effort or basically clear understanding of all the members that this is what the alliance was for. Let's do this. That was really great to watch and to see the unity, strength, and the support that the alliance is able to provide to Ukraine, both in terms of what the allies, the members are doing, but also the coordination in Brussels, which is also very, very important. Of course, focusing on what is possible, finding the sweet spot between or among the positions of member states, and it's so great to see that all the allies, the members, and the alliance and the EU, both of the organizations in Brussels, are able to support Ukraine in the heroic fight that they are fighting, and that is also an important factor of what is going on in Brussels, in NATO, is that the Ukrainians actually are able to use the support very effectively, and coupled with the heroism and the strength that comes from their bravery is something that enables even more support. So it's a closed circle, works really good, and it's a huge effort. I mean, it's not something that we thought would be easy, but nevertheless, I mean, we started and are doing it. So
huge undertaking.
Yes.
And I think to your point about that cycle of cohesion, we're coming out a couple of months after the Vilnius summit in July, which was historic in many regards, with defense spending pledges and regional defense plans. Obviously, the first summit for Finland as a member of the alliance. I think that there were some that were hoping or waiting to see more on the work for Ukrainian membership into the alliance. How do you judge the successes from the summit a couple of months ago?
Coming from defense, the biggest thing from the summit is obviously the new regional plans. I mean, this is modern collective defense for the alliance. This is groundbreaking in a sense, very different from what we were used to. I mean, obviously, the situation is more clear. The strategic concept says it clearly. There are two main threats, right? Russia's aggressive behavior and terrorism, and Vilnius was instrumental for having plans that actually tell us how we're going to deal with those threats. We have them now. We have to obviously resource the plans, but we have a clear scenario how we're going to deal with the situation if it gets worse. Who's going to do what where, which is always good to have, and we know how much money we need to build the capacities and capabilities. So the strong push for the 2% of GDP as the floor, that is something that is very important to send also to NATO publics, right? In the member states, every country looks at this differently, and in our case, it's important to see that this is not a unilateral view, but all the allies agree more resources are necessary. Some of them are at like 3%, 3.5% of GDP. Some go to 5%. which is ambitious, but still, I mean, we're at 2%. We see it as the minimum, and we will continue spending as much as possible above the 2%. So number one, plans. Number two, yes, Finland as a member. Hopefully, Sweden very soon.
Hope so.
That was also something that we thought could have happened at the summit, but it is what it is. We will be looking forward to having Sweden on board very soon. Both countries provide tremendous capabilities to the alliance and show how much the environment has changed. I mean, that's a clear statement right there. Long-term neutral countries, they couldn't imagine to be part of an alliance. Now they cannot imagine to be outside. So that's really illustrative of how much things have changed. And Ukraine, very clearly sent signals of unity on the issue that Ukraine will become member of NATO. There are conditions, as we have said also already in 2008, that Ukraine and others will join NATO once conditions allow. Obviously, the conditions have been more complicated since then, but what we have done is we took out the membership action plan as a necessary step. So now Ukraine, whenever the situation will be, at the minimum of allowing Ukraine to join NATO, then they will become NATO members really soon. That's a strong message. That is for us also the best possible guarantee to see on the eastern flank. I mean, we try to think about our current situation in a way that the difference between Ukraine and Slovakia is that there's a war in Ukraine and there's peace in Slovakia. We have the same border, and the difference is we are in NATO and they are not. We see this as the main argument, main reason, and also is the showcase of the decision that we have done to become NATO members. This is the time when we feel that was a good decision, and we feel it's up to the country. If Ukraine wants to join, it's up to them. Obviously, we understand the reasons, and we should make everything that is in our possibilities to let them in when the conditions allow.
Of course. No, that's an excellent point. Moving to next year's summit. So Vilnius, we immediately have to start thinking about the next 12 months. How does Vilnius and the summit there in July set us up as an alliance for Washington next year?
The important thing, again, from a defense point of view, will be the implementation of the plans, right? Of the decisions. This is really something that makes sense on paper. We need to make sure that we can present how we are able to implement it, how we are able to create all the conditions and the processes basically to fill the plans. In Slovakia, this is connected to the multinational battle group that we have present on our territory since April last year, which has been more or less at the level of a battalion size group. And now with the NATO summit decisions, we will be augmenting that to brigade level. So we're working with several countries, including the United States. The Czech Republic is our framework nation. There's Germany, there's Slovenia, and there was a Dutch contingent for a short time. But now we are also working with Spain, which is another great partner to have. They will provide a strong commitment and contribution to the brigade size battle group. They will then take over also from the Czech Republic as the framework nation. But it shows how we are strengthening the presence in the east, building the deterrence, defense, pre-position the units that provide not only the military presence, but also the political and the psychological, I would say, guarantees and validate the point that the allies are there and they are ready to help if necessary. At some points in our history, Slovaks were not so really persuaded that NATO would come to our defense if necessary. And if we get attacked, I mean, we would need to wait for a while until they decide that they will come. So we're trying to make sure that people understand that we haven't been attacked. I mean, this is not a situation where any NATO ally has been attacked. And the alliance already works to defend allies, and the allies are already there. So with all the procedures and all the the exercises basically to be really ready in a short time to augment the battalion to a brigade. This is our focus for the next year before the Washington summit.
Yes. And those are huge changes
Oh,
in
yes.
terms of a message to your population and collective deterrence as you move forward. I wanted to pick up on that point because you all have been Slovakia has been such ardent supporters of Ukraine. Humanitarian aid, military assistance, a tremendous amount of support. My understanding also is that Slovakia has taken a tough hand with Russia disinformation, intelligence schemes. From your perspective, how has the policy of Slovakia vis-a-vis Russia changed, if at all, since the invasion last year? And do you see that those changes continuing in the years coming up?
The policy is very clear. Russia is the aggressor. Obviously, I mean, there's no doubt about that. It has helped in creating the awareness about what everything actually is going on and could be going on, and the influence through intel agencies or propaganda became very obvious, and it was also then politically more. There were more possibilities to deal with the influence. So that's what we have done in the past. Limited the number of intelligence personnel at the embassies. There is a tremendous amount of propaganda that flows into our systems, into our media or social media through established, I have to say, well-established channels coming from Russia, and then being dispersed through various networks that have created links in the past and now don't even need some affiliation with the Russian propaganda, but still help augment the messages that they send. The Russian embassy, with their Facebook profile, they produce as much or more content than the Russian embassy in London, Paris, and Berlin combined. Wow. So and that's just one of the channels, right? So there's many more of that. So we're trying to first push that down a little bit. The government, the previous government, has done some efforts to limit the propaganda on the internet and also on social media. Here we also need a helping hand from the owners or providers of the social media. We are working with them also in cooperation with the U.S. government and the Congress. So that's all very welcome. But we're trying to expose the influence also. People, regular people. Sometimes it's difficult for them to really understand or imagine that there actually is somebody sitting in the Kremlin or somewhere, thinking about how to hurt your country through propaganda or malign influence. So if they see concrete cases, then it helps them to be more vigilant and to think twice when they read information and make their decisions and assessments.
It's a constant battle, right? And the vigilance aspect of it is
so the policy is very clear, and with the public perception, I mean, we have a lot of work ahead of us, but that's not just Slovakia. I mean, this is the situation in many countries.
Yes, no, absolutely. So then that brings into a greater question. So obviously, Russia as the aggressor, the largest, war in the European continent since the Second World War. From your perspective of where Slovakia sits in the east of Europe, what other security threats should we be paying attention to from your perspective on the eastern flank?
On the eastern flank, I mean, Russia's aggressive behavior, that's something that will remain there for a very long time, no matter the outcome of the situation in Ukraine, right? I mean, Russia has shown that it doesn't think about, doesn't plan 2-3 years ahead. This is, it's, their policy, I would say, or their intent is to be ready, to be militarily strong, and to use the strength to push their interest and destabilize, create these gray zones. That's part of the policy, which is, unfair, first of all, and it's a real security threat. So there's to stay with us for a long time. Even if Ukraine wins, this doesn't go away, and it just changes the places where those frictions will actually continue. So that's one of them. The other one, obviously, is still terrorism. I mean, this is something that didn't go away. It just has different forms and has transformed also after we left Afghanistan. But there are let's put this in geographic terms. So the regions that we actually follow closely. This is the Western Balkans, obviously. I mean, there's a lot going on politically, but also, influence-wise. We are trying to make sure that the countries still understand that from our point of view, their future is in the European Union, is in NATO. This is, part of Europe, and if they so decide, they will become members of these organizations. Because it makes sense. I mean, look at the Slovak story. I mean, again, we are strongly persuaded that this makes a lot of sense. And this the whole situation is then exacerbated by the ongoing migration that flows also through the Western Balkans, which again brings a lot of misinformation, disinformation. I think even people feel a little bit of afraid from the unknown that comes with migration. But Western Balkans, very important and interesting and influential part of the world, where concrete threats can emanate from, is the Sahel region currently. This is something that puts a lot of pressure on Europe to deal with the situations where we have coup d'etat, basically. As a wave going through the region, making the whole region very unpredictable and hopefully not very unstable. But this is something that we want to make sure that we have a joint European response to. There's a lot of countries, a lot of European countries that have a concrete history in that region. We are not one of those, so we want to make sure that we have an objective look, and that the EU can, as a whole, can work with the countries in question and stabilize the situation. Because if it gets wrong, and the system or the structure collapses, then there's going to be even more pressure on European countries, and that can translate into many threats.
Yes, I think that's such an important point. We have to talk about the other vacuums of influence, not just in Europe, but things that affect Europe, because those all together can cause instability. And thank you for bringing up the Western Balkans. That's something that we pay attention to closely here at CEPA, and it's something that we need to pay attention to and keep an eye on for sure. So as we close out our conversation, I want to bring it back to the unity of message from Europe and the cohesion, because to your point, there's other risks, there's other threats out there, there are other priorities. We all hope that the Russian invasion in Ukraine ends tomorrow, and that we can move forward, and Ukraine can choose, as you said, its own path. As the war goes on, and other things come up and other security issues come up, how do you envision maintaining that unity that we've seen over the past 18 months within the alliance?
I strongly believe it comes with the understanding that the security situation has been changed. I mean, this is not what we expected back in the 90s or even early 2000s, right? That we will be. I remember a time when we were actually looking for ways and areas in which to cooperate even more with Russia. I mean, I went to a seminar where we exchanged information about nuclear doctrines between NATO countries and Russia. Right?
Seems like a lifetime ago.
Yes, exactly. This is gone.
Yeah.
This is gone.
Yeah.
Probably forever is a strong word, but for a very long time. And we need to make sure that we can find a way to get back from the time of the peace, when we thought that 1% of GDP is okay for defense. It doesn't develop the armed forces anywhere, but it's fine because we'll probably never use them anymore. We're very much past that. So this is a new normal, right? The 2% are very symbolic in this case. They provide let's call it the optimal amount to have armed forces that you can actually use whenever you need them. So we have some debt to compensate that we have created in the past, but now we are in a situation where we actually need to develop that. So we need to spend more also on the armed forces. I understand that is something that the unity of the European Union and NATO can be that could be a difficult factor in that unity. But this is the understanding. I mean, if there's no security, if there is no defense and strong deterrence, if there is no reliability that we will live in peaceful times, then we actually cannot really talk about developing our education system or healthcare or anything else. I know this is the basic equation of any government, but the sides of the equation have changed now, and I hope that the people can understand that. I strongly believe that the February last year was actually for Europe, for Slovakia especially, was a little bit of a 9/11 moment where we actually realized that we need defense, and that the modernization that we have been trying to push for such a long time, that is actually something that is absolutely necessary.
Absolutely. And that fundamental shift of we're not waiting to go back to where it was a few years ago is critical, I think, as we move forward.
We haven't chosen this, right? I mean, this is not our choice.
Right.
We just have to deal with the consequences, and unfortunately, it is what it is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Minister, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for tuning in to the State of the Alliance series. Please visit CEPA.org and follow CEPA's social media accounts to stay up to date on events and analysis.